Hello! I am back. It's been a very long time between videos, but I have a plan. There's more videos coming your way, and I was inspired today just to very quickly talk about grades, grade exams, and that whole world. I've had a number of students and parents of students recently who have brought up the questions about should we be doing the next grade. I don't know why my son can't learn all the things for this grade. I want to do this grade, but could I skip to one grade up? And it's reminded me that here in the UK, grades have really become the central thing. That you want to learn drums, you do a grade. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are a lot of positives to that. But I think something that might be of interest to students here in the UK is that this doesn't happen in the rest of the world. I grew up in Australia, didn't do a grade in my life. None of my colleagues ever did them. I think if you talk to or listen to some of the great drummers, great drum educators today, 99.9% of them didn't do a grade in their life. They learnt from great teachers. They might have gone on to music school and done their degrees and things, but they didn't do grades. So I think the very first point I would make about grades is that it's a recent phenomenon, and interestingly, it's sort of a UK thing that we do grades, and I'm not here to belittle them. We're going to talk pros and cons of grades, but first thing to know is that it is not the only way. So, to take from that, I would say if your teacher ever suggests doing stuff that's not in the grade book, go with it. I want to just quickly discuss that sort of thing, but yeah, my first point is that it's not the only way. Okay, so grades do a lot of good things. Okay, they're really handy because they give us plan right off the bat. There is a clear-cut syllabus. You can look at the plan for how to take a grade. I learned these 3 songs, I learned these 3 exercises. I might need to know that rudiment, and boom. Practice it. You play with a CD, so it's pretty clear that you need to play at a certain tempo, and boom, you can do your grade. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's really, really great. It helps parents. It helps them kind of guide their child. It's very clear that there's here's the plan. You should be practicing that. It gives goals for parents and for the students. It helps them, progress. I should be able to learn all this, do my grade 1 in the next 6 months, or, do my grade 3 by Christmas next year, or whatever it is. They're really good for goal setting, and they've been really well written. I have nothing but great things to say about these books. I use these books. They're great. There's a clear progression of ability, of skills required. They walk you through a slow, increase in speeds and an increase in the variety of styles. They're really, really great. Where I think drum teaching goes wrong in the grades is that it only teaches this book, okay? Or I should say, not just this is the Trinity College regular drum kit book, which is soon to be out of date actually, so we all have to go and buy the new ones. It could be Rock School, it could be ABRSM, could be whoever you want. These are just my props, so I've lost my train of thought. As I said, where drum teaching goes wrong is if it only teaches these books. I've inherited students from other teachers, and the first drum book they went and got was exactly this book. Not even the preliminary one, not even this guy, but this one. So the child had been given, straight off the bat some songs with complicated quaver, semi-quaver rhythms, and had not ever had a real plan of attack they'd never learnt this stuff. They hadn't learned how to count the rhythms properly. They just learnt a word that matched the rhythm. It was a real shortcut way of doing it, and I think that's the danger with grades, is when we just rely on this book to teach us everything, okay? As I said, if a teacher ever steps outside of these and says, look, we need to work a bit more on your sticking patterns or on styles, go. Don't worry if it pushes that grade deadline down the track. I think making that the be-all and end-all to get as many grades as quick as possible is wrong. I'm not a fan of that. I've got some other props here. For instance, when I studied, we didn't have grades. I would go to my lesson with a pile of drum books, and I'm dropping them, there's so many. And my teacher would make me buy all of these books, and it was particularly uninspired teaching, I would think, that we just did, right, do numbers 6 to 12 out of this book, and then guess what I'd practice? The next 6, and then we go to the next book. Right, play pages 22 and 23 out of this book. I'd do it. Then next week I'd play the next 2 pages. And that was my half-hour lesson, was Phil churning through those books. But there's a reason for that. And that's, if you listen to drummers now, or drum educators list the greatest drum books of all times, they give you this one, okay? This one, and then they give you this one. You know, I can just provide details later about what these books are. But there's a reason that the very top of this book, my date, 1987. Yikes. And notice, then I went to a new teacher, crossed out, did it again, 1989. You know, and for some reason, that was crossed out and done twice. I don't know, maybe I didn't do it well enough. But this stuff, look at it, it's not exciting. It's just pages and pages of drills. But honestly, that's kind of what we need to build up on the drums. And it's what's missing if we just do out of these books. It's not nearly as fun. Granted, playing quavers on a snare drum for 25 minutes, you know, whatever you need to do, it's not particularly fun, but it requires a bit more commitment, I think, to do it, okay? This book, instant gratification with these things. The CDs are great, put on the songs, and you're right in there already playing in a rock band. I played the song correctly, tick, done. But I just feel that be wary of this over-reliance on just thinking these are the only way to go. Just doing your songs out of these books is the only way. The final thing that is that I would also, you know, be wary of with these guys is that you can get almost all the way through grade 7, grade 8, and play one style. You can play one style of music. It's up to the teacher and the student to pick which songs you do, but you can just avoid any jazz. You can avoid any Latin tunes if you want. That, again, not a particularly good way to learn the drums. We should be learning variety of styles. Granted, that's a more advanced thing. I know most of my students, if you're watching this and you're in here, I want you doing the rock songs because that's where we start, I think, when we learn drums. But as you go on, I want to incorporate, we need to learn jazz coordination because there's skills involved in jazz hand coordination that you don't get playing rock beats. There's a level of independence that is just not, it's inherent in jazz, it's not inherent in rock and pop beats. And I could make a big long list of all those sorts of things that you would add on. For those of you that learn from me, there's a reason why we finish the introductory Trinity book, and then I give you about 5 sheets worth of material, so that when you open up this book, it's really easy. And that's my plan. You know, I don't want you to open this up and think, oh my gosh, it's really scary and I don't understand. This is just sort of like the icing on the cake of what you can already do by the time you get here. And that's my plan for any of it. I don't want to use this as teaching material. This is performance material. I think the best way to think about these books, the grade books, is that they tell you what to play, but they don't tell you how to play it or how to prepare to play it any better. And that's kind of my big thing. I always start lessons with warm-ups, which is basic hand patterns, because you don't cover that in grades. But honestly, if I can teach people one thing about how to play the drums, it's how to use your wrists. It's not how to play a rock beat at crotchet equals 170 or whatever. It's using your wrists, and that's developed by not even reading music, okay? It's not tested in any grade, but it is the most important stuff, yeah? Okay, so rant over. I'd love to open up discussion about what we all think about grades. I'm not belittling them at all. I use the books. I put kids through grades. I think they can give a really good deadline, especially for younger students, when a little motivation like that really helps. But they are not the be-all and end-all of learning the drums. They are just a system that it's evolved. It's very popular now. Also, what grades do is it matches how other instruments operate too. Yeah, there's a lot that's different about learning the drums than learning other instruments, learning pitched instruments, for instance. The exercises are inherently different. We don't play scales. We don't play arpeggios. So it brings us a bit in line with how other instruments work and how they're tested. So that's great. It makes us feel a bit included as drummers in the bigger pedagogy for all instruments. But I think drums, and I'd love someone to take me up on this, drums, more than other instruments, it's a physical instrument that is learnt physically as well as, reading off a music stand. And there is just leads to some inherently different ways we need to learn. And that's what all those books I carted to school taught me, is the physicality of it, the coordination of patterns, not just necessarily reading a song. And so by the education I had, I can do most things when the music's on the stand. I can do more than just play a single song that's on the stand. So there are inherent differences in how drums are learnt, and I think remember that when you're wanting to race through grades. If you go through the grades just as quick as you can, you will miss things. You will miss... Yes, we can read songs, but do they have the right feel? Are we finding what's inspired this song? Are we listening to the right drummers and the right recordings that inspire how that song works? All of those sorts of things. So don't race through them. Do them, because I think they're brilliant, but take your time and let your teacher take you in and out of the material. Anyway, rant over. I'd love to hear more from you. Any comments, any questions? I can be quite opinionated about these things, so have at me with other thoughts, and, I'm very open-minded to how all this stuff works. But, yeah, I think it's worth discussing versus just taking grades as the only way.